organ harvesting, dark rituals, pouring gay juice into the local water supply. What do these have in common? They are all tools utilized by the radical left to keep you, the working man, in line. Their leader is Joe Biden, and under his inspiring leadership, the libs were able to seize control of the American government. However, keeping their position is easier said than done, as it's election year and old Donald is vying for the throne. In today's Rimworld video, we will be helping Joe Biden ensure he wins the election by channeling the dark powers of the all-consuming void. Thanks to Rimworld's new DLC, Anomaly, a host of rituals and horrors beyond human comprehension have been added to the game for us to interact with and manipulate for our own nefarious purposes. Will Joe Biden succeed in becoming Dark Brandon and rig the election, or will the Orange Man put Sleepy Joe to bed permanently? Only one way to know. We landed on the rim with 4 colonists. First is our fearless leader, President Joe Biden. As a colonist, he has great intellect and social, but considering he's an 81-year-old man, he's functionally useless at everything else. Accompanying Joe Biden is his best friend and emotional anchor, Barack Obama. Are these two secretly in a gay relationship? Probably not, but that doesn't stop me from painting them in erotic positions. Providing security for these high-priority individuals is a highly skilled Secret Service agent that goes by the nickname Sarge, as well as a mindless feral ghoul that feasts on raw meat and can quickly regenerate from almost any wound. He's essentially just your average United States Marine. Near our landing spot rests an ancient monolith, a tether to the dark powers of the void. While our colonists began setting up a temporary shelter in a nearby cave, Joe Biden attuned to the monolith, which will now allow anomalous events to occur. The first night, our colonists slept nestled in their beds within the confines of the cave, blissfully unaware of the horrors that lie before them. The following day, our colony was beset by our first anomaly, a creature called a sight stealer, which can turn invisible and attacks without warning. Unfortunately for this creature, it decided to target our brave young Marine, which brutally mauled the anomaly with his sharp claws. We captured the sight stealer and built a temporary containment chamber for it, patching its wounds and studying it to gain insight into how to conduct basic rituals. With the anomaly captured, we began further developing our colony, building a generator and planting crops, when suddenly we heard that age-old familiar sound. It was time for our first raid. A woman named Poopy boldly strode into our lands with the intent to take us down. Unfortunately, much like a Middle Eastern child, she was no match for the might of the US Marine Corps. We incapacitated Poopy, and seeing as she is a very skilled crafter, captured her and began indoctrinating her into our society. Though Poopy wasn't the only threat that faced our colony. Over the next few weeks, we were beset by raid after raid of ever-increasing strength. However, raiding us proved to be a bit of a Sisyphean task. See, scattered around the map are a number of insect nests, and every time a raid showed up, they walked right into a nest and subsequently died. While the insects were protecting us for now, that safety net was fleeting. During the time of Sisyphean raids, our colony experienced a bit of a golden age. We constructed a geothermal generator to meet our ever-growing power demands, a rec room and living quarters, and recruited Poopy, who fell in love with none other than Barack Obama himself. Sorry about that, Michelle. Our colony was truly thriving, but remember, gentlemen, this is Rimworld. It's when things are going good that the game spikes your blood pressure the hardest. A massive raid, the likes of which our colony was not prepared for, sent by none other than the Orange Man to assassinate the blossoming Dark Lord. Fear began creeping into the hearts of my colonists, yet Joe Biden was unfazed. See, for weeks now, he had peered into the void, and he'd gained power both libtard and conservative could only dream of. He made his way to the ritual spot and began chanting, his hands thrust to the heavens, and called forth a horde of undead corpses. These shambling mounds of flesh spilled into the map and tore the raiders to pieces, breaking their bodies and minds, as the acolytes of Dark Brandon could only stare in awe. However, Joe Biden wasn't done. It wasn't enough to defeat the enemy, he wanted to send a message. We captured a survivor of the raid and brought him chained and gagged before Joe Biden into the center of the ritual circle. Once more, Joe Biden thrust his hands into the air and began chanting, siphoning the years of this prisoner and causing him to grow 10 years younger, while the prisoner got 10 years older. With that, Joe Biden got a little less sleepy and officially began his transformation into Dark Brandon. Over the following days, we further expanded our colony, fending off raids, recruiting new colonists, and constructing basic defense turrets. However, we soon learned just how inefficient our mediocre defenses were when a horde of flesh beasts ripped from the ground and began assaulting our colony. While we succeeded in fending off the beasts and capturing one of them, it was still a closer battle than I was comfortable with. I took a step back and attempted to use my brain. What I needed was the most efficient way to kill a large amount of people possible. But how could I achieve this? In my contemplation, I asked myself the age-old question, WWMD, what would now do? With the glorious leader in mind, I began laying plans for a kill box. While construction of the kill box continued, Joe Biden casted my personal favorite ritual, skip abduction. When this ritual is cast, a random person is forcibly ripped from their home and teleported to the ritual site in a coma. The person we summoned was a woman named Nicole, who Joe Biden immediately siphoned 11 more years from, and once again grew younger. With his power growing and the kill box finished, Joe Biden decided it was time to strengthen his connection to the void. He made his way to the monolith and began psychically attuning to it, causing the monolith to upgrade and opening us up to attacks from Tier 2 anomalies. If we were going to succeed in rigging this election, we were going to need a loyal police force to violently suppress any and all opposition. Therefore, I decided Joe Biden was going to become a mechanator. I sent a signal to a rogue mechanoid ship in orbit, drawing it to my colony, and securing a mechanoid control chip, which I installed into Joe Biden's brain and began constructing mechanoids to serve as Joe Biden's personal honor guard. With extensive defenses, an expansive mountain facility, and an ever-expanding population of colonists, it was really starting to look like the Dark Brandon acolytes had a bright future ahead of them. This fucking sucked. The map was covered in a layer of darkness, but this isn't just any darkness.
This is advanced darkness.
If at any time a colonist steps out of the light and into the dark, they begin getting ripped to shreds by some invisible force. The only way to stop this event is to destroy 3 objects that are scattered around the map, which are guarded by creatures that dwell in the dark called Noctuls. Destroying one causes a horde of Noctuls to attack the colony, which further increases the tedium of this process. To make matters worse, a substantial amount of my power is generated by solar panels, which the lack of light prevents. The lack of light also prevents my crops from growing, meaning that my food stockpile is limited. Yeah, no, this is great. I started dealing with this event by setting an allowable area for my colonists so they won't kill themselves in the dark, and then turning off all non-essential appliances to conserve power. I then began the mind-numbing gameplay loop of slowly building a path of torches towards one of the objects, assembling my colonists, attack the object, defend against a ensuing wave of Noctuls, recover from the attack, and then do it all again. Slowly but surely, I destroyed the objects until finally, after what felt like an eternity, I destroyed the final one, stepped off the ledge, and freed myself from this prison. Thankfully, I will never have to go through anything like this ever again.
Foreshadowing as a narrative device.
With the darkness cleared, I sat back for a moment, hoping for a long period of peace to allow my mental to recover. This is a revenant. Appearing without warning, this creature will target a colonist once a day, putting them in a coma that persists until the creature is destroyed. It will then flee and hide somewhere on the map until the following day. It's also capable of opening doors, because, you know, why not? This particular revenant seemed hell-bent on dismantling the very foundation of my colony, as it immediately targeted my leadership, putting both Barack Obama and Joe Biden in a coma. Guys, does this revenant look familiar to you? I've got it. This is potential Trump running mate Kristi Noem. That bastard, sending his right-hand woman to do his dirty work. I should have known. Little known fact about revenants, all of them kill dogs. While Kristi Noem had dealt a severe blow to my colony's leadership, I wasn't worried. See, when Kristi took down Joe, I was able to use disruptor flares to track her to her resting place, and with the full might of my colony assembled, I marched on her position. I stunned Kristi with an EMP grenade and proceeded to beat the living shit out of her until she dropped to the floor dead. I then harvested her spine from her corpse for future use. Even though we killed the Revenant, the fact that anything was able to incapacitate Joe Biden was a sign that Joe needed to get far stronger. Thus began our sprint to the finish line. We started this sprint with the unveiling of a new ritual. In addition to stealing someone's years, Joe Biden can now steal their stats. In our new ritual chambers, we performed a skip abduction, teleporting an elderly woman before us. We then drained her of both her years and her stats, greatly improving Joe Biden and causing such psychic strain on the elderly woman that she rapidly developed both Alzheimer's and dementia, and then died of an aneurysm. Over the following weeks, we began performing this series of rituals on anybody we captured. Those that survived and were deemed useless had their organs harvested to be traded for components, implants, and armor. Who knew organ harvesting was so profitable? Those that had value were lobotomized and recruited into the United States Marine Corps. Our colony was armed to the teeth. Our army of mechanoids had grown, and Joe Biden himself, on top of having greatly improved stats, received a number of implants, including a pain blocker, nanomachines, and replaced his spine with that of a revenant, which allowed him to turn invisible at will. On the eve of the final battle, our colonists gathered around the monolith as the now 38-year-old Joe Biden reached out to the void to prove himself worthy of the title, Dark Brandon. The monolith upgraded and the endgame began. To perform the ritual and rig the election, Joe Biden first needed to attune to 2 obelisks that dropped around the map. As a unit, we fought our way to the first obelisk and secured it. Joe Biden attuned to it before we moved on to the second one. We attempted to draw the metal horrors defending the second obelisk to our position. However, to my utter surprise, the horrors abandoned the defense of the obelisk, choosing instead to attack our relatively undefended colony and weaken our defenses. We took the opportunity and attuned to the second monolith, progressing this battle to stage 2 and summoning a retaliatory horde of enemies to attack our position. However, this horde split into 2 groups: the Shamblers, which charged us directly and prevented us from returning to defend the colony, and the Gorehulks, which joined the metal horrors in tearing up our defenses. We managed to fend off the Shamblers before our wounded colonists pushed on to retake our home. We arrived and a chaotic firefight ensued. While we won the battle, every single defense turret had been destroyed. To make matters worse, I had little over a day left before stage 2 of this fight began, which would bring with it 3 more obelisks, and of course, our old friend, the darkness. The obelisk landed, and once more the map was plunged into a state of perpetual darkness. Thankfully, unlike before, the obelisks were much closer to my base. Once more, my colonists set out, killing the guards of the obelisk and allowing Joe Biden to attune before pushing on to the fourth, utilizing floodlights to illuminate the path forward. We quickly secured the obelisk, forming a defensive line as Joe Biden attuned yet again. Once more, a horde of enemies was summoned onto the map, and we moved back to the kill box to fend them off. However, without our turrets to aid us, the Shamblers poured over us in overwhelming number. The walls to our kill box were decimated. 2 colonists were down and another was killed as the undead tide poured over us. Thanks to the might of the US Marine Corps and the skill of both Sarge and Biden, we were able to squeak out a victory. However, our defenses were decimated and our colonists' bodies were shredded. A lesser man might have given up. I am not that man. Fueled by the indomitable human spirit, I began cannibalizing my base for resources in order to repair our defense turrets. With the kill box repaired and victory in sight, we set out to capture the final obelisk. We quickly secured it, and Joe Biden attuned to the 5th and final obelisk before hurrying back to our defenses as the final battle ensued. Desperate to stop Joe Biden, the greatest horde yet of anomalies poured through our walls. However, much like a Minecraft YouTuber accused of diddling kids, we held firm. Blood was spent, flesh was burned, and when the dust settled, we had won. We stepped over the charred corpses and approached the monolith as Joe Biden performed his final ritual.
Joe Biden, wake up. Joe Biden, wake up.
This just in. Just mere moments after former President Biden, now President Brandon, won his sweeping 538-0 victory over President Trump, rifts in space-time have begun opening up all across the globe. Preliminary reports suggest an endless tide of fleshy beasts have been pouring out of these rifts, slaughtering anything and everything in sight. That's right, folks. It looks like it's the end of the world. I'm sure my loved ones are being ripped apart right now, and I'll probably soon be joining them. But first, massive shout out to Fluffy Giggles McCoolKid for being the first big boy patron. I swear to God, you're the fucking man. Sorry, That was unprofessional. Also big shout out to Patreon supporters Lohawk, Bob the Bobber, Disaster of Steel, The Stranger, Reds, Doc, Lady Corvia, Hobbs, Luke Strobel, and Joaquin Prieto. Thank you for supporting this news station, and good luck in the apocalypse. This is Baked Bongos, signing off.